this on your phone.
Thank you.
All right, everybody say hi to Rhett.
Hi, Rhett. Mwah. We miss you.
And Rhett may be coming back.
I was gonna say, is he coming back to PA?
Is that why you get rid of his desk or his name tag?
Keep it down, it's still recording.
He's very upset.
I'm upset about that too.
He's upset.
You can put him in our office, we have you on there.
Okay, okay.
Your card, you have a Rudolph card.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right, Lou asked me to talk to you guys about construction and land and, finding properties. I'm gonna walk through a couple things that we do to, find the land. We'll also help you, pretty much give you the rules of thumb and how to price it and get into, minimum amount of details of what you want to look for when you're looking for land. All right, first things first. Who here is working with a builder? 3, 4, 5. I started this 13 years ago. My top client's a builder, and I'll be honest with you, the most amount of business I've gotten out of him is not building. I've gotten rentals, I've gotten family members that wanted to buy and sell houses, I've gotten properties he didn't want. If you're not working with a builder, everybody should get one. I'm willing to help you get one. Just tell me where you're working, what areas, and we'll give you your 2 cents on what builders to work with. They got a ton of knowledge. My first phone call when I have a problem is not to Lou. My first phone call is to my investor/builder. He's been doing it 30, 40 years. I always run it past him when I have a problem before I even go to Lou. They got a ton of knowledge. They all have a ton of properties. They can help you out with a lot of other stuff, including construction. Everybody should have one. They will work with anyone. You bring them land, they will relist it with you. They're gonna want a discount. They're a pain in the butt to work for. They're very demanding. They know more stuff about real estate than most of the people in this room, but everybody should at least have one. Where to look? We got Trend, Public Records, LoopNet. Now it's real simple. Everybody knows how to search for land on Trend. Public Records, you can search vacant, you can search farm. There's multiple ways to search on Public Records. LoopNet's another MLS, it's a commercial website. If you're really digging into something, LoopNet's also a great tool. Once in a while, you're a commercial agent, he'll put a big piece of land up there. If you have somebody, you may be able to find that. The first thing I want to go into is Trend. Now, you can search the MLS every day looking for land of a realtor that listed it. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be the best piece of land. Every real estate agent, as soon as they get a piece of land, is going to run it their builder. If their 2 or 3 builders don't like it, they're going to run it through their office, and a week later, then it's on the MLS. And it's probably not the greatest piece of land, but it doesn't hurt to look. I bought plenty of land off the MLS, but everybody knows that they're going to pocket listing that for at least a week. I want to get into the satellite. When you're driving around, or if you're in another property and you see a nice wide open field, you're probably wondering who owns that. Like, oh, a builder would buy that. The hardest part about finding land is actually finding the tax ID in the public records. Now, is everybody familiar with the satellite thing on Trend? Probably the new guys aren't. If you go on the Trend, I wish I would have had it. I don't want to mess this up. If you go on the Trend, you'll see a little map right above, right where the seller's disclosure, right where the public records thing is, right where the plot plan is. If you click on it, it'll bring up a grid of where that house is. So I always say, if you're trying to find something, don't guess the address. Find a neighboring address of a house that's, if here's a piece of land, find the house that's closest. Punch in that address, find it on public records. Use the satellite. All you gotta do is move the arrow, click on it, and it'll pull up the public records. As soon as you click on the public record thing, it'll say the tax ID number. If you click on it, it'll pull up the public record sheet. Print out the public record sheet. This is a property that we have currently under contract. This is exactly what came up, and you can see there's no address. That's pretty much how we found it. We ended up finding the neighbor's address, 406 Warren Road. The house is right next to the lot. So all I had to do was really easy, just click on the neighboring property, and that's how I found it. This came up. when you're on public records, this is what you want to find out. You want to find out the owner's name and mailing address. If it's an LLC, we have a link that we got from a title company. You can, cross-reference it. It's almost like a search engine for LLCs. Every LLC that's registered in the state's got to have someone's name behind it. If anybody wants that search, just email me. I'll send it over to you. These are pretty much the 4 or 5 main things you want to do when you're looking at the public record sheet. You want to find out zoning. R1, R2, R3. Don't bother memorizing it unless you know pretty much your hometown, because R1 in Plymouth and R1 in Cunchy are 2 different things. It's going to give you the size, the frontage, everything else. Don't bother wasting your time memorizing these things, because every single township is completely different. But most of them are online. Print them out, Google search them, whatever. You want to get them before you have to ask the township. My recommendation is you find a piece of land, you start asking about zoning, you tell the township guy the exact address, the whole world knows about it. You might as well bought a billboard about it. You want to do as much research with the least amount of people knowing about it. Once you find out the zoning, it'll tell you exactly how much land you need to build how many houses. First thing you want to know is the frontage. Frontage is how much of that property borders the road. Most properties, most zoning is going to be a 50-foot minimum for frontage. Sometimes you can get a flag lot, then you need 10 or 15 feet wide for a driveway. But frontage is a very big part of this, especially in these little areas around here. You'll see that one's 46 feet. If it's 50 feet, you may be able to get 2 houses. If it's only 20 feet, you're probably only going to get 1 house, or that's probably going to be too small. The other thing with the zoning, you're going to want to know the size and acreage, how many square feet. Whether it's a 1/4 acre or 10 acres. The other thing I always do is print out the plot plan. Now, Chester County, this is the plot plan for the property we're talking about. It's got about 146 feet of frontage. It's going to allow to build 1 single house with their zoning rules. Anybody got any questions so far?
The zoning rules, you just know them, you're investigating them?
Yeah,
They're
just-
accessible through a website, what's the?
You can Google search Plymouth Meeting zoning rules. Most Upper Merion, Plymouth, a lot of the bigger municipalities that are really doing well have them all online. The little municipalities, Bridgeport, Cunchy, some of them you're gonna have to go there and say, hey, listen, I just wanna know the zoning on R2 in this district, or whatever the zoning may be. They may be AA, BB. Everyone's got different ones. Try to find out what you can before talking to the township. As soon as they start getting wind of it, oh, well, there's only 1 10-acre property zoned to R3 left in the county or in the township, and they're gonna know exactly which one you're talking about. And they're gonna probably open their mouth to somebody because they're not held to anything. What did I hit? There we go. All right, so say you do all that, you find a piece of property, you did some of your homework. We use Cole's Resource. We just got the cell phone list. I've had it for a year, or over a year. Batting average on it's probably about 40%. The phone numbers are all correct, or if they're in there.
Is that something we have to pay for?
No, it's
No?
free now.
Free?
Cole's has always been free. They give you the house phone. Krieger upgraded it and gave us the cell phone list, which I paid $1,300 a year ago for, which is great. I always feel it's better to make a phone call to the people because, if you send someone a letter, maybe they just toss it out. If you call them, then send them a letter, obviously somebody thinks you're serious. The cell phone list, it's real easy to use. One trick I can tell you about it is if you get lazy and only put the cell phone number in, or only search for the cell phone, you may not get it. If you go back in and do the neighborhood search and punch in the home address, you may get a house line. Sometimes it's a little screwy. Don't just give up because you didn't get the cell phone number right away. The other thing you gotta watch is sometimes it's a kid's cell phone, or you get the wife, or you get the husband, and the other person owns it. So just be prepared for that before you get a call. I like calling because they already own something and I'm calling to buy it. When you're calling FSBOs and whatever else, the hang up rate's probably, 7 out of 10. I get hung up on, what's over there? I get hung up on once out of every 100 phone calls because people aren't upset with me. I'm calling because I have a builder or someone I know that'll purchase that property. They don't get angry at you. They'll say, hey, no, I'm not interested. Once in a while, you get somebody that owns a farm that their family's owned for 100 years. They'll get a little upset and say, I'm not selling it to a developer. I'll die before that happens. Okay, no problem. Sorry to bother you. But 9 times out of 10, people will at least talk to you. They'll say, oh, well, listen, we tried to subdivide it in the 80s, the 90s, whatever. But most of the time, they're pretty interested. First thing they say is, make me an offer. How much? Yada, yada, yada. We'll get into that. If you keep hitting roadblocks, feel free to call me. If I can't find it, your last resort's to talk to a neighbor. That's a crapshoot. You're gonna get some little old lady, yeah, I know Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they moved to Florida, they own that farm. But I don't want no homes behind me, and you already got her going, and she's already fighting you and didn't even get started trying to subdivide it. All right, this is what you do when they call back. Whether you send them a letter, a phone call. You want to be ready, but don't be too ready. Don't shoot off everything I teach you here within 30 seconds because no matter what I teach you, every single situation's different. Every single township's different. There's plenty of times I looked at a piece of land, did all my zoning, and I'm like, okay, great, we can build 3 houses here. Then you talk to the township, and they have what's called a density factor in Upper Merion, for example. Everything I read on this one piece of paper said I could build 3 houses there. By the time I got done with the township, we were only allowed to build 2. So that took that piece of property and made it worth, $50,000 to $100,000 less than what we thought we were willing to pay for it. All you want to find out is whether they're willing to consider selling it. That's your only goal. If they say yes, I'll listen to an offer, I'll take an offer, make an offer, you're in. Ask for 2 or 3 days, buy yourself some time. You do not have to get back to them. At the moment, you're the only guy looking for it. Do not talk price, ask for a few days preparation. Okay, here's how pricing works. 25% is the max. 99% of the builders out there will pay for it. Whether it's the guy I've been dealing with for 13 years or Toll Brothers. And I just sat down with Shelby's project manager last Thursday. We were at happy hour. He was like, bring me land. I was like, what's a good rule of thumb? He's like, we use 25% as well. That's pretty much the max. So pretty much if you're gonna find the end unit, so if the house you're gonna build on there is $500,000, the most the builder's gonna pay for that dirt is $125,000. Now that's also stating that if you're lucky, maybe you get something down on the main line, maybe in Cunchy, they'll pay up to 30%. You may get a little bit more, probably not. So if you're pricing the land and you're talking to somebody, I urge you to keep it around that 25%. You may get, Mr. and Mrs. Smith that their grandmom lives out back and they always want to live on that street and they'll pay a little bit more for it. Unless you got that one person that's dying to be there in that location, that's pretty much the max. Now that's for a fully approved, ready to go, shovel ready. All the builder's got to do is buy it, go fill out an application, and they're ready to build. If you have raw land where it needs to be subdivided, that number goes down. But your builder will be happy to, beat them down. Fully approved lots. That means, like I said, everything's fully approved. Seller's got a nice survey. It's already got what's called a footprint, where you're allowed to build a house. It has all the setbacks in it. All he has to do is go to his architect, come up with blueprints of how to build a house and the design of the house. As long as it meets all the right setbacks, that's a fully approved lot. They can start building tomorrow. Any questions?
I would assume that that's a small percentage, right?
I'm sorry?
I would assume that that's a small percentage of the total lots.
It all depends on, a lot of people, if they're thinking about it, they already started the process a year or 2 ago. So you may get lucky. If you're just pretty much cold calling every single piece of land that's available out there, then yeah, that's gonna be very small. You want a by right plan, which means the zoning allows, you know, one house, one single lot, or the zoning allows 30 houses, 30 lots. When you start trying to do something that's outside of zoning, it's time consuming. So, don't get me wrong, if you can find 10 acres for $1 million and the builder knows he can subdivide it, it's the right price, and it's gonna take a year, it's worth it, because at the back end, you're gonna get 10, 30 listings out of it. Also, you gotta consider, with that 25%, site needs minor work, no steep slopes, minor excavating. If you're selling a war zone, you know, versus a nice manicured farm, it's gonna be two separate prices. If the property's very challenging, whether there's lots of rock, steep slopes, all that kind of stuff comes into a factor. Soil samples, whether, you know, you're building off the side of a cliff or if you're building a nice, you know, vineyard. Stormwater management systems, every township's different. Some of them are worse than others. Don't even bother, you know, wrapping your head around it. You just want to know what it is. That's very complicated, very expensive, and also counteracts with the steep slopes. If you have a property that's sitting here and the rest of the town's way uphill, your stormwater management system has to collect all that water plus your own rainwater, and they are through the roof. You want to let your sellers know if they have a property that's if your builder says, hey, this thing's gonna be a real nightmare to do stormwater management on, you want to let them know how expensive they are. There's a property in King of Prussia that Laura used to have listed, 8 lots, you know, nice area. Guy only wanted $300-400 grand for it. You thought it was a home run. Every time I showed it to a builder, they look at the stormwater management system and they were like, that's gonna cost at least $250,000 because the property was here and the rest of the town was all up here. What else I was gonna say? Public utilities have to be very accessible. With that 25%, if you're, you know, obviously you gotta have power. Everything else can be done. Well and septic, or public water and public sewer. Everybody wants public sewer, everybody wants public water, and they really want gas these days, that's for sure. Nobody wants oil. Electric's just not fun, and propane tanks, you gotta put 2 of those monster tanks, or you gotta dig them out and you gotta put them in the side of the ground. You wanna make sure of all that stuff. Pico's an easy phone call. Hey, do you have gas on Warren Road, West Goshen Township? Yes, we go right by it. Or hey, we're gonna put it in. Or hey, you gotta run a pipe 100 feet or 500 feet. That makes a huge difference. Same thing with the sewer line. You wanna pray that there's sewer going along the front. If it's, you know, if you gotta run a sewer line 150 yards, you're increasing the price of that construction project a lot, and the builders all wanna take it off the seller. If it's a back property, such as a flag lot, same situation. If you're running a sewer pipe, you know, hundreds of yards, it's gonna increase the price of the property or decrease the price of the property a lot. Sellers are always trying to get as much as possible. Builders are always gonna try to beat up the seller. Hey, I gotta run a sewer line 50 yards. I gotta run a gas pipe. I gotta run water, blah, blah, blah.
Do you look at the neighbors' houses to see if they have septic and well?
Yeah, I always use public records, or I get out in the street. If you got a manhole cover somewhere around there, you know there's sewer somewhere. Same thing, you can usually call the townships, get a sewer map, if your guy asks you for it, depending on, if you're on the listing side, you wanna know where the sewer line is, you wanna know that there's public water. You get into septic systems, you can get a minor septic system for, you know, 5 to 10 grand. They can go as high as 20, 30, 40, 50,000. Sometimes they got sand mounds, and you better have a certain amount of acreage to be allowed to have that. Any questions? How to sell if builder's not interested. Always try to sell it with a builder tie-in. If I get a piece of land The first thing I do is, obviously, I take it to my builder. He says, no, Eric, I'm not interested. It's too far for me, it's too much, whatever the case may be. What I like to do is, which I just did on Janie Lane in West Goshen, I'll take one of my builder's houses he already built. I'll say, all right, listen, if I find a buyer for you, will you build a house? Yeah, no problem. I'll pay $258,000 for that piece of land, even though that lady's nuts. But I want $1 million for the house. All right, no problem. So I'll take a picture of one of his, top end houses. I'll put it on the MLS, 4 bedrooms, 3,000 feet, 2.5 car garage, 2.5 bath, yada, 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 and put it out there for $1 million. Maybe you get a buyer out of it. Maybe you actually find that buyer that says, yeah, I love that area, have your builder buy me a house. He's still gonna pay you a percentage. It's a little bit of, smoke and mirrors, but as long as you have a builder tie-in paperwork, you're allowed to do that.
How are you paying in a multiple list? You're gonna listen with the seller, right?
Well, you list it just like you would list any piece of land.
Okay, so it
So
has
you'll
to be
do an
listed.
MLS sheet,
Okay.
3 acres,
Okay.
Janie Lane in, West Vincent Township, and, you'll put it up for $250,000. Then you'll also do another one with the same address, builder tie-in, $1 million. Your guy will be happier than anything. He'll still pay you your, 5%. Be honest with you, usually construction listing prices go out 4.5% to 5%. You bring a buyer before he even bought the dirt, you should be demanding 6%. And I'm sure he's not gonna have a problem paying you an extra 1% because you set the entire deal up and he didn't have any risk. Your builders don't want it. My first thing then, once you know somebody doesn't want it, ask the neighbors. I know it kind of counteracts what I said earlier, but if your guys don't want it, ask the neighbors. You never know what neighbor's got an extra 150,000 in their pocket that says, I've been trying to buy that for 30 years. My grandfather tried buying that. I don't want nobody building next to me. You say, all right, listen, you don't want nobody building next to you? No problem. Please, buy this or, work out a deal with them. I hit that stupid button again.
I think that was the last one.
I think it was too. Yeah, that's it. All right, anybody got any questions?
I have a client who actually is wants to buy a property in Philly, and he owns on both sides of it. The lady, I guess, went to a home like 4 years ago, can't find her. How do you find her?
Yeah.
I'll show you, you know what? All right. Ain't my laptop, so stop making fun of me.
Yeah. I have no idea, because they get.
Now, this thing works great. If you guys don't know how to use it, I suggest playing with it because
Right.
you can use this also for what we're talking about here, but you can also use it for investment properties or any other property.
Because I have her name, but the house has been empty for 4 years,
You're using your own check.
and they're still paying the taxes.
Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where are they sending the tax bill? Go city taxes to that.
Go to the tax guy? Alright. It's gotta be, I don't, if she's, there's still a lot of
If
her
somebody's
kids are paying
paying
it.
those taxes.
Brian, what's the address?
Let me go upstairs.
You're gonna put me on the spot if I know the address.
Let me see what happens here.
I'm gonna put another floor on.
Oh, no, I just don't have it. I don't even know if that's the.
Yeah, I'll have it on me then.
All right, no problem. I'll show you how to do it.
I listed one, and I'm getting 2 more at Jefferson Crossing, so I just listed a file. I still have 265 maybe, and then I got 2 more people on. I'm not taking off.
First or second?
First, yes, I think that's what it is.
So that gives it a basement. Right.
Thank you.
No,
Next
one's
person.
not finished, the one, I
her name right here.
All right, you watching? This is the neighboring address to the lot I just sold. All right, everybody see this thing right here? That's your map. Click on that. Now, this is a great tool. I had this when I was selling commercial and we had to pay for it. Now the Trent has it. It's great. I use this all the time. So there's the address of the lady I know. There's the lot. So say you didn't even know this person owned it. You drove by and said, oh, look at all that grass right there. All you do is find out this address, punch it in, you know it's that property to the right of it, click on it.
Oh, wow.
Well, no, I got that. I got her name.
See, now listen, once you punch in the right address, you just click on what property you're talking about, hit the tax ID number, and that's the one right there.
I have.
406 Roseanne. Want to try?
No, I mean I pulled that information up. I just can't find the lady.
Oh,
There's no contact information for her.
did you go through Coles?
Here's the deal. She's like 75. They put her in a home like 4 years ago. I pulled up public records for like multiple states that I thought that she could be in, or for Philadelphia for death certificates. Nothing, but they're still paying the taxes. Literally, the house has been sitting empty. Nobody's living there. Nobody visits for 4 years.
Is the address for the tax bill the same as the property address?
Yeah, they're paying the taxes.
Yeah, it's a tough hit. I'd probably go to a neighbor or something. I also use title
My buddy's
companies.
neighbor, they own 3 lots on the one side of them and 3 lots on the other. If they get these 2 in the middle, they have an entire block in Manioc.
Yeah. Send letters to the house or post it to the front door. You gotta
Yeah.
get creative. I've used title companies
He's
because
lived next door to her for 4 years. No one's ever come home. Like, I mean, ever.
Yeah.
Like, at all. And his, you know, and his grandmom owns the other corner, the other 3 lots in the corner.
yeah, I mean, I'd be all over it. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I mean,
No mail gets sent to the house.